show up. Wait, comment. Huh. Hi, Scooter. You're here so early.
Oh my,
No, I thought that he's the first one. Hi, guys. How is everyone doing today? So Harley is MIA a little bit,
not actually.
like from us. I'm sure he's fine. But so we are here though. Hi, Cody. And so we figured if Harley is not going to show up,
Or if he's running late, whatever.
yeah, we can answer the questions that you guys might have for us. That two of you guys who are here. Let me see if maybe I can like put this up on Twitter and on Instagram.
It's not showing up at all on PC.
Huh.
Hmm.
Hi, Gramby. Hi, Praxis. Hi, Scooter. Let me see. I'm going to loud share, copy link, and I'm going to put it up on Twitter. And you guys just had such a good interview.
Here we go.
Can you go back to?
Yeah, I just sent like.
Oh, is it here?
No. It's this way. It'll be there. Okay. There we go.
Oh, 6 people. Okay. Isn't Twitter acting up? Yes, it is, but we still like use it intermittently when we need to. So yeah. Well, you guys, if you had any questions for me on or Linnea, this is your chance to ask them because while right there, do you think Prigozhin? Okay, here. Do you think Prigozhin will make it out alive, or we'll learn that he jumped out of the window soon enough? You start with that one.
Yeah. I think that statistically speaking, it is unlikely that he will survive this entire episode.
Well, according to Kirill Budanov, who's the intelligence director in chief in Ukraine, he's the main spy. According to him, there has been a hit order put out for Prigozhin already to the Russian FSB. So I would say that chances of him surviving are slim to none. And well, unless he and Putin enter an outward war. Hi, Nick. Hi, guys. So yeah, while Harley, oh hi, Nuclear Salmon. Yeah, some of the handles I love.
Quite in like that.
I know. But so you guys, because Harley is kind of not responding right now, we hope that he's okay, which we're sure he is. We're probably having just some sort of issues with timing, I guess. But while we're here, we offer this time to do a Q&A with us as well. So if you have any questions for me or Linnea about anything Ukraine related or us related, yeah, we are happy to answer.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Hi, Gap. Oh my gosh, good to see you. Evan. But, Gap. Are you in Cindy withdrawal? Yes, especially because we just did an interview with a bulldog hospice for the podcast. And by a bulldog hospice, I mean it's the first and only service in Ukraine that actually rescues specifically brachycephalic breeds, so bulldogs, pugs, and bulldogs, pugs, and French bulldogs, English bulldogs, and pugs. And they actually don't. So one of the things that's fantastic about them is that they keep the dogs unless they're completely sure that the people that they found are going to be able to take care of them. And their motto is they don't look for bulldogs for people, they look for people for the bulldogs. And unless they're completely confident that these bulldogs are going to be safe and secure, they won't let them. And they won't let them go there. And so they have 10 permanent bulldog residents. And for me personally, it was a very touching interview because City. Russia.
We have an update on the reactor in Zaporizhia.
Oh my gosh, yes. Any updates? We do have an update. Russia can blow up the ZNPP remotely after transferring it to Ukraine, according to Zelensky. He explains that Russia is planning to make an emission at ZNPP to freeze the war. They need this to strengthen their army and return to Ukraine with higher force. So what they likely might do um, is they might leave the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant and give it to Ukraine, then blow it up and say, "Oh, see, Ukraine blew it up." Because if they mined it, they have remotes to the mines.
And I think based on the stories that we've been hearing, the reports that we've been hearing, it would be that most likely that they would attempt something like a slow leak
Yeah,
radiation as opposed to a catastrophic failure. But
yeah.
as we've seen in the past,
So the problem here is that whatever Russians plan, they are not very good at executing it. So allegedly, and this is a rumor, but this is a rumor coming from the main intelligence director of Ukraine, that Russians were supposed to just make a dent in Kakhovka Dam to scare Ukraine into submission, and they accidentally put too many mines in there, and they blew up the whole thing because they didn't understand how a dam structure works. So when Russians say that they likely want to, when the idea is they likely want to do a slow leak, the question is, do they know how to do a slow leak? Or are they going to just, accidentally blow the whole thing? So, yeah. What do you expect?
Okay.
What do you expect from the NATO summit? Will there be solid paths to membership? Well, there are more bilateral security guarantees that France, Germany, the United States, and other um, large European influence countries are going to issue for Ukraine at the NATO Vilnius summit to show their commitment to Ukraine's accession to NATO, because security guarantees worked so well in 1994 with the Budapest Memorandum. So well. So this time it's going to work. No, I do not expect them to make any solid promises or commitments. I think they're going to go with the security guarantee scenario, and they were saying that there is a surprise awaiting Ukraine at the summit, and the surprise turned out to be security guarantees that frankly anyone can wipe their rare and with because they're not, documents are so that people usually don't stick to them. And we see that in the case of the Budapest Memorandum.
Yeah, Jens Stoltenberg specifically said that any discussions would happen after the summit.
Yeah.
So.
And then, how was the Ukrainian village last night? Well, we are going tonight, not last night. Hi, Veronica. Hi, Kat. We're going tonight, not last night, and we are gonna film a vlog for you guys. The vlog, food video log, the vlog. So we're gonna go to a Ukrainian restaurant called Trident. We're not gonna tell you the time because what if you were in Chicago and you were like, "Hi," and we were like, I'm kidding. If you do see us somewhere, feel free to say hi. But just like if we know you, if you have been watching from the sidelines for a year and you've never said hi, and then you just say hi on the street, it might be a little strange. but be mindful. Because I've had someone run up to me in New York on the subway and literally be like, "Oh my God!" And it's so weird because like I don't consider myself. It's strange. And they were like, "I watched you. Oh my gosh, is this city?" And it was like it was very sweet, but also it was like the weirdest thing that has ever happened to me. Because like also they were like screaming and everybody was like staring. And I was just like, I don't like big crowds of people staring. But yeah. We are gonna go get some Ukrainian food, and this restaurant has been highly recommended by my Ukrainian friends, by Ukrainian diaspora here. So yeah. Realistically, oh my gosh, they're nuclear, so I love that. Realistically, how do you see this ending? Putin in power, Putin out of power, would a regime change be more dangerous than the current war? So, um, so I don't think a regime change would be more dangerous than the current war. I don't think it would change much. Well, I think the war would actually end because they simply would understand they don't have resources to continue doing it. But for foreign policy and for domestic policy, unless Russians wake up and rise up, they're bound to have another dictator, and it's not going to be a people's coup of power. It's going to be a coup of power from another politician who is said to be a dictator because it's literally going to be a power grab. And the problem with Russia is that if you look at history, they have never had a democratically elected president, and even Yeltsin used tanks to retain his power. So every single one of their presidents has always been a dictator. Be it the Soviet Union, be it the Imperial Russia, all of them are dictators, and all of them have absolute power, and they stay in power for as long as they can. And so, unless Russian people attempt to do something about that and Russia collapses into smaller republics, even the scenario with smaller republics, right? Even if the republics themselves separate, that happened when the Soviet Union broke down, when the Russian Empire broke down, right? The empire sort of shrunk. So I think if it happens this time, sure, the republics have the potential to be independent, but Russia, as we know it, like the white Russians and the core Russians, not the ethnic minorities, are likely going to get themselves a new dictator. They're just going to be a much smaller country with way less opportunities.
And I
So
think
yeah.
that the instability
Mhm.
is going to cause problems even if the war is over. Having
Yeah.
that degree of instability is going to be really, what's the word I'm looking for? Dangerous. Has the
Yeah.
potential to be really, really dangerous.
Yeah.
Where was that?
For
Okay.
them, not really for the
Right.
outside world, because the degree of instability and the like kind of frequency at which Russia is very rapidly, like we don't tend to see it because Russia still has tanks, Russia still has bodies, right? And the war is still going on, but their economy is really bad.
Yeah.
And so far, they can only afford to buy like third grade weapons from Iran. And a lot of these countries are turning away from them already. They're not going to be able to set up manufacturing for a lot of the stuff that they need in daily life, which are things we don't hear about, right? Like Russia doesn't produce nails, Russia doesn't produce paper clips, Russia does not produce things like that. And so they're going to start running out of these. Russia doesn't produce paint for cars. Russia can't produce car parts. It's like they outsource all of these things from the post-Soviet satellites, and all of these post-Soviet satellites are turning away from them already. And imagine what relationship they're going to have with these countries once they fall, right? They're not. They're not going to have a relationship, and so it's going to be really, really hard for them to sustain themselves.
Oh, hi,
Oh,
Ian. Yeah.
my fashion line. Do you mean merchandise? Nick is asking.
Oh, here, let's.
Uh, do you mean the merch from the site? It does. It ships to the UK. If you have issues ordering, just DM me and I can manually put in an order for you.
Yes. Okay.
DM me, yeah, DM me the. It shouldn't, but DM me the. If you'd like to, you can DM me on Twitter or Instagram with the things that you'd like to purchase, and I can manually put in the order for you. We're also going to be migrating our site soon. No, it is in US only. It ships to Europe, it ships to Canada, it ships to lots of places. People from Poland bought merchandise and it was delivered. It's just shipping is like $5 more expensive, but yeah, you can just let me know. I answer most of my DMs anyway. So the only the only ones that I don't answer is like if there is an overwhelming amount of DMs and then my ADHD and I'm like, oh, I forgot. And then 3 months later, I'm like, oh my god. My friend Linnea. Yeah, we kind of do look a little. Yeah, you could, you could be.
It's that Northeastern European thing.
Yeah, well, she's Swedish and Ukrainian.
That's close.
We were mass-produced at IKEA.
Yeah.
IKEA, sorry. Wait, Grumpy, to take over, would he be more... Oh, this one's interesting. He's got...
Oh.
If Prigozhin were to take over, would he be more dangerous than Putin? Yes and no. He's not as stupid, and he's not as, like, seasoned in being a dictator, so I think that he would actually get the real picture and think through what his army can and cannot do. So I don't think he'd be like, if he took over the MOD and he actually saw what's going on with the Russian army, he would probably back off and he would plot to come back with more powerful. So I think he'd be more rational in terms of understanding the losses and understanding how little Russia can currently do. So he would actually pull out in that way. But he is more dangerous because he doesn't have a fear factor. He's like an ex-convict oligarch who is very, who is, he's an ex-convict who was in maximum security prison for a decade.
He's volatile and he has his own moral code.
Yeah, he has like the moral code. So Russia has this principle, and it's like воровские понятия, which means thieves' understandings, and that's the moral code of someone who had been to a Russian jail. And it's a very different moral code. And so he he's more loyal to people who have been to prison because they understand each other and they have like a connection and a bond. And so he has this sort of like jail moral code. And he is not scared of anything. He's not scared of dying. He's not scared of, he's volatile. Yeah. So he would be more dangerous in terms of like the way that he would rule Russia. Oh, you found shipping?
Yeah. So is that Nick who asked?
It was Nick, yes. And,
Okay.
and oh, Zach is Smiley. Okay, good to know. I like to put, because YouTube handles and TikTok handles are different.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
sometimes I think it's two different. It took me so long to understand that Fella McGrinches is poverty-born performance. And he was like, "This is Fella," and I'm like,
You mean Jack of all trades?
"Yes."
Okay, so really quickly, Nick, when you go on to the site, that's terrible,
To purchase.
It'll say US shipping by default, but when you go down to country in your shipping address and put in wherever, then it will automatically change the delivery option up top. Okay, let's see.
You either with them or you find a window. Well, Russian prisons are not as sophisticated as Windows. They just shoot you in the head, and they don't care because, again, they are mafia. It's the people officially in power who need to like cover up their traces.
Yeah.
People like Prigozhin don't feel the need to, like, genuinely. They're not going to bother with Windows. They're gonna off you and just get rid of your bodies when we're in a forest.
All right. Let me get Harden's Twitter. Okay. So Harley's Twitter, is there a way to type on the screen? You can post a comment. Oh,
yeah, post a comment. And oh, there you go.
Someone did it for us.
Thank you, Manny.
Thank you.
Manny is very good at that. You guys are so helpful. Also, so Robert had discovered the email that we received about Mike Pence. Should we read that out loud?
Oh,
You guys, we received fan mail, except it is hate mail. From yeah, but it already, from the from the caption and Robert's summary, it's perfect. But so we received an email, and it seems to be just. I used to receive a lot of emails like that, but I blocked them. There were people who would like, "I hate you" and stuff like that, and they would tell me like all this crazy stuff. I've read them on live before. It's so fun. Like, it's hilarious. One of them was like crazy because he was telling me how stupid I am and how much I'm lying or something like that. And then he went into like objectifying me very serious, but like in a very creepy manner. Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Wow. Okay, so strange. Let's find our
Okay. I really wanna read that. Should you know or should I?
Oh, jeez. Okay. Wow.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Oh my god. Alright. Hello. I really hope you read this email. I think it contains information you should consider if you wish to maintain your credibility and maintain support for Ukraine with pro-Ukrainian Republicans. If pro-Ukrainian Republicans don't like us and that stops them from supporting Ukraine, you're not pro-Ukrainian. Anyways, first, I am not a Republican. I did not and never would vote for Trump. In your most recent podcast, you mocked presidential candidate Mike Pence, questioning both his vocal support for Ukraine and suggesting he tried to blackmail Zelensky. He didn't try, he did with Trump in 2016, I believe. They were threatening to withhold aid. Zelensky does not find compromising information from Biden Jr. In Ukraine. So, okay. I think the events of January 6th demonstrate that Trump and Mike Pence had strong disagreements. Pence essentially sacrificed his political career and risked his life to defy Trump. Further, totally not a Republican. In the referenced phone call, it was Trump speaking, not Pence. Next, your suggestion that Pence had not been vocally calling for support to Ukraine is absolutely 100% not true. He has vocalized support. Where?
in a podcast.
I also genuinely have not heard anything about Mike Pence connected to Ukraine until he visited.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he's vocalized some support, but like Lindsey Graham, come on, very different things.
Yeah.
And I don't like Lindsey Graham, but I will acknowledge his support.
Yeah.
That support has come at a huge political cost to him. For example, here is a podcast he did with Jordan Peterson, where they get sidetracked by the Ukraine war and end up spending 90% of their time on Ukraine. Pence, clearly, sets the record straight on Ukraine. I also suggest you read the comments below to see exactly how much the Republican base hates him for his support. Well, I mean, so if the Republican base hates him, then how are we gonna maintain pro-Ukrainian Republicans by talking about Pence if they supposedly hate him? As per you, this email has so many contradictions.
Yeah.
Finally, undermining one of the few Republicans speaking out in favor of Ukraine is absolutely idiotic. The Republicans are already turning against Ukraine. Mocking anyone in the Republican Party who says anything in support of Ukraine is absolutely foolish. Yeah, but see, here's the thing. It's not only about Ukraine, it's also about standing up for what we believe in. And we do not believe in any Republican because they are tyrannic, sorry, and literally turning this country into a fascist hellhole. And so I am very vocal about the difference between the Republican politicians and people who identify as Republicans and fully understand not to vote for any of the fantastic people that are currently in office who definitely don't represent them unless they're terrible bigots. But I don't see those watching or listening to us
Mm-mm.
anyway.
I think
And
there's
I
there's
also,
a vast canyon right now between
yeah,
conservatism and the
Republicans.
Republican Party,
Yeah, exactly.
or the Republican Party leadership specifically.
Exactly, and I'm not gonna endorse the Republican Party leadership just because I want people to listen to me or something, like, I've always been, and so is Linnea, we've always been incredibly true to our beliefs, and I'm sorry, but Mike Pence is a piece of shit, and always has been and always will be, and,
Yeah.
I'm happy that he's spoken out in favor of Ukraine to put his political career forward because all of the Republicans already hated him, and now he seems to, want to form stronger ties with the Democratic Party. So why wouldn't he do that? So yeah, I'm not gonna pat him on the back for doing a tiny podcast and speaking out about Ukraine. But yeah, it doesn't undermine my credibility to it doesn't undermine my credibility to call out the things that did actually happen. And as a vice president, sure, he wasn't present in the phone call that Trump did with Zelensky. However, he was involved with with Giuliani, and he was involved with the whole case. And there is a whole lot of proof to that. Giuliani wasn't really the star of the phone call either. However, he planned the whole thing. So that's
will
a stupid
also
argument.
say that when you are working as part of an administration, you are a representative of that administration, and not being outspoken against that activity specifically makes him complicit.
Yep, exactly. So yeah. Um, okay, so Anne says the backbone of a jellyfish. Let's see. We uh we met we I mean we didn't see some questions because
I think I okay. I was
okay.
catch up.
Okay, yeah. Mike Francis yeah. Peterson is and yes, the audio is very gargling. I'm in New York. Gargling? I'm so sorry. Is it gargling? Do you guys? I'm sorry. Maybe I was very close to the microphone. I was like in it. Okay. Secular Sakai. Oh, hi. Oh my gosh, this is from Red Ukrainians channel. Thank you so much for your super chat. And is there a question? Let's do it. Okay. A friend from Taiwan is helping send medical vehicles to Ukraine soon. How can Ukrainians, Americans, and Canadians best assist both Ukraine and Taiwan to defend themselves? Slava Ukraini. Героям слава. So I think that the situation, I'll address Taiwan first. So I think that the situation with Taiwan is a little better than the situation with Ukraine because the United States had announced formally that if China were to move on to Taiwan or anyone else, frankly, the US would step in. Taiwan is the biggest producer of chips. And for that, I mean like latest technology chips. So that are used to operate a lot of military technology in the United States. As we know, the US does not screw around with their military. So if Taiwan were to have any threat from China and China were to try and seize Taiwan, the US would move in. And the thing with China is that just like Russia, they are a paper tiger. And I'm saying that responsibly because in a dictatorship, it is incredibly hard to maintain control of the military or structures that are as important as the military because no one wants to be the messenger who gets shot. So a lot of the times, dictators surround themselves with yes men because they don't want to hear the truth. And in those situations, what ends up happening is that all of the functions of your government and of your governmental structure are not nearly as up to date as you would like to think they are because no one's reporting in real information. And Chinese economy is very rapidly turning into rubbish. So I would say that China doesn't actually have the capacity to really do to Taiwan what they would want to. And after they've seen what happened to Russia, after Russia invaded Ukraine, they're definitely not going to risk that happening to them, especially if the US promised to get involved. So I think that Taiwan has much better security guarantees, actual guarantees than Ukraine does. So Taiwan is sort of set in that way. But I think that spreading the news about China and Chinese propaganda and stuff like that is really helpful so we can stay on track and so we can have people on Taiwan's side. And uh, both and the best way to help Ukraine assist ourselves is defend ourselves is uh, do harass your senators and representatives into telling them to send the weapons that Ukraine needs because you would think it doesn't work, but it does, especially if you phrase your emails in a way where you are a constituent of that state senator or of that representative and that you are not going to vote for them unless they do this. And if they receive a lot of those emails, they very often change their decision or they start lobbying more because they want your support. And if they see that their district or their state is really vocal about these things, they will be trying to push them into Congress.
I will say that phone calls are most effective. If you can call your congressman, do it because when their like, inboxes get flooded with voicemails, those voices do get heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good idea. If you have multiple phone numbers, if you're a good voice actor, just keep calling.
Lots of I know at least some of you millennials and Gen Xers out there are probably familiar with like calling the contest hotlines or whatever on the radio and
or like cold calling,
Yeah, same
or
thing.
like cold calling. Yeah.
Okay.
What about 3%? Say could be sent for a layer, Jose. Well, so it's not necessarily states in particular, it's more of
Mhm.
like the representatives, right, in the states. So for instance, New York is an incredibly blue state, right? But if you go down the streets of New York, you don't see like Ukrainian flags everywhere, right? You will see them in apartments where people live, and you see a lot of support if you talk to people on the street, but it's not like super outwardly, right? Like, I know that people in New York are sending a lot of money to various Ukrainian organizations. Like every single person I've just randomly met and we talked about Ukraine, they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I actually donated to this organization. Do you know if they're like good? Because I want to make sure to donate like more and stuff like that." And they will ask me questions and they're very supportive. But if you go to New York, it's not like you wouldn't if you're in Manhattan, you wouldn't see like, oh my gosh, super supportive of Ukraine. There's nothing that indicates that. In my neighborhood in Brooklyn, which is Williamsburg, which is kind of interesting because it's just like a big hipster neighborhood. Every lamppost, someone put like drew a graffiti of a Ukrainian flag on it. So every lamppost has a wrapping of a Ukrainian flag. Yeah, and every street corner has like a little Ukrainian flag on the bottom. You know, like where they mark. Yeah, which is really cute. But someone like went out and did that on their own. And then when you're in Chicago, for instance, if you're downtown, every lamppost of Michigan Avenue has Ukrainian flags because it's one of the biggest Ukrainian diaspora cities. So I think it's not about what how you feel when you go to a certain state. Like I went to South Carolina last year and there were Ukrainian flags everywhere, everywhere. And it's because of Lindsey Graham. So it's kind of like the most important support is not the support that's just flags and like and like Ukrainian paraphernalia and stuff like that. The most important support is the one that we don't see, and that support is calling your representatives, calling your senators, donating as much as you can, if you can, and if you can, spreading the word. Reposting Ukrainian voices is very important because one of the things that I do want to say is lately there are a lot of Ukraine support bloggers, but I have an issue with a lot of them. I mean, not like personal issue, right? But because they tend to start their channels to uplift Ukrainian voices, and then they argue with us, and then they teach us what to do and what to say and how to act, and then they contradict the things that we want, and they start promoting what they think Ukraine should want. And that's an issue because the people who started their channels and gained their following that listens to them as experts, right, on the idea of promoting and uplifting Ukrainian voices are now literally disrespecting and downturning Ukrainian voices. So yeah, if you're a person on the internet and you have a following or you like to repost content about Ukraine, please consider reposting actual Ukrainians and not giving way to foreigners. And I know there are a lot of creators that you guys like, but the problem is, as it happens with everyone, when it's not your personal like issue, a lot of these creators tend to start getting an ego and they tend to start doing more damage behind the scenes than they actually do good. And them talking about Ukraine from their own perspective that doesn't match the Ukrainian perspective in a lot of ways is really not helping much. It's just it's just fuzz. So if you see Ukrainians talking about Ukraine in English, please give preference to those accounts over just like random Americans or Australians or English people
Yeah.
who do that. Like I think it's very helpful to have accounts and it's very helpful to repost content, to repost videos of what's happening. But if you're reposting content that is like talking about Ukraine or Ukrainian issues or Ukrainian perspective, please use Ukrainians, not like random people.
Yeah, I would say that as Americans, our primary function is to amplify Ukrainian voices.
Yeah.
And then do what they say.
Mm.
So I'm gonna highlight this for a sec. So this is a really good point here. I think that it's important to recognize that in the United States, we are very much a function of our media. Um, for good and for bad. And so, people believing the propaganda that they're exposed to doesn't make them bad people, but it is our job as people who know better to correct the narrative and to find ways to shut down those sources of propaganda.
So one of the things that I've noticed is Russian propaganda falls apart very quick once you start asking more questions. So the reason why we launched FAQU with Svidomie is because that podcast, which is called FAQU Ukraine Explained, and it's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and on YouTube here and on their page. And the reason why we launched it is because we specifically take these popular narratives and we question them until they fall apart. Because as you go through the podcast, you start realizing that these narratives are contradictory. And I want to show you, like, actually a very good example of Russian propaganda gone wrong. And I get a lot of those in my comments where these trolls and these narratives don't match up with anything and they actually contradict themselves and they happen to sort of devaluate their own narrative. So here's a comment I received. Now show how Ukrainian soldiers murdered a bunch of refugees in Crimea in 2012. In 2012, our president was Viktor Yanukovych, who was fully supported, backed, and guided by the Russian government. So if that were true, which it's not, then that would be under the guidance of Yanukovych, who was under the guidance of Russia. So that would mean that Ukrainian soldiers had received orders from the Kremlin to murder a bunch of refugees in Crimea, but also what refugees? There was nothing going on in 2012 for Crimea to have refugees. And yeah, the invasion of Donetsk, Luhansk, and Crimea didn't even start until 2014. And yeah, there were no, I don't know where this person is taking that from. So I asked him, who gave you that script? Because that makes no sense.
Yeah, check your sources.
And don't fall for propaganda.
Let's see.
Oh, Nick was able to get wheat cyclic tea.
The sound quality.
Hmm. Huh.
I wonder if we're, let me up the gain and see if that.
Yeah.
Oops.
I don't know what right was too, but you got it, Danny. uh, no. No, because Russia doesn't care, and also the UN is useless. I think the only way that they won't blow it if literally NATO troops were stationed at the power plant. And I honestly think that at this point, with the level of danger that the power plant is under, and I'm not saying the Russians even blowing it up on purpose, but actually their mines there and military equipment.
And Soviet era
Yeah,
missiles and
yeah.
rockets.
And it's sort of one of those things where if anything goes wrong and the domino effects of these things start, it's it's gonzo, right? So I think that with the level of danger, honestly, there should be NATO troops there now, specifically for the power plant.
Yeah.
Like they need to take over the power plant.
Yeah, unfortunately, having UN forces there just gives another opportunity for a false flag.
Yeah. Yeah, specifically. And the UN is so useless. Oh my gosh, I could go on about it for days.
Also, hi, Sandra.
Also, hi, Sandra.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah, EU specific questions. I'm going to remove myself for a second.
Okay,
Linnea.
place of work. Okay. Oh, okay. So I've been an actor for 32 years now. Because I started when I was a kid. And voiceover work was something that I started doing in college. I used to do recording for the Evergreen Radio Reading Service in Seattle. I did computer games, video games, all sorts of stuff like that in terms of voiceover. So I did a what was it called? Carmen Sandiego math mystery or something. That was fun. Yeah, I haven't been on stage in a very long time, probably about 15 years. And I haven't been on, the last time that I did an on-camera gig, was actually a Starbucks commercial back in 2008 maybe. So it's been a while. But yeah, that's me.
Yeah, and I started voiceover work, and I started my channel, and people started reaching out to me and telling me that I'm a voiceover. United 24 reached out to me, being like, "You are a professional voiceover talent, right?" I'm like,
I am now.
"I am now." No, but I did tell them that no, it's just a thing, and actually somehow, I know you didn't ask it, but somehow I got very into it, and Linnea says that I do very well at it, which is like the master compliment. Master. You want them to announce a full Ukrainian victory is the only option. Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
That's a very good suggestion.
Yeah. Who was it that said, right now we're giving them enough to um, bleed, to slowly bleed, basically.
Yeah, but not enough to win, yeah.
Yeah, enough to survive.
And enough to like repel, but not enough to overtake, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's
And
happening.
that's really problematic, and ultimately becomes more expensive for all of the nations that are providing aid and support.
Oh my gosh, wait. I was happy to see in Monroe, Orange County, in New York, they have like, oh, that's so cute. I love that. Anytime I go to like a random location in the US and I just see lampposts or mailboxes or something painted blue and yellow, I know that it's either the people there who cared enough to do this, or it's the authorities there who cared enough to do this, which means that support from the people is really high.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice to see.
Oh, yeah, I think the comments. Some of
Where's Harley? We don't know. We had a miscommunication of some sort.
and
So when he does reach back out, we'll reschedule. But in the meantime, we're here, so feel free to ask us questions about Ukraine, about anything.
yes, well,
Answer to the best of our ability.
yeah, and we will try to put out the blog after, like tonight, because it's not really much editing, and I can do that in CapCut, and I don't have to like use fancy software. Also, you guys, we have some good news. So some of the podcasts are going to go video because Robert, our fantastic business partner, has managed to get us a ton of good gear. By a ton, I mean like your girl over here is changing her 2018 iMac to an iMac Studio from this year. That's so powerful. And, so now I won't need to harass my husband to help me edit because he taught me how to use the software. It's just my computers are not powerful enough to do it efficiently. So now they're gonna be, and so I'm gonna teach Linnea video work. She's gonna teach me audio work, and we're gonna combine our efforts and Rob's because he's been such a help. He's also a financial genius. Robert, you're a financial genius. I know you're watching this right now. So or maybe he's not, but like if he's gonna watch at some point. No, he messaged us.
Oh, just kidding.
Yeah, he's not listening.
Sorry about
But
that.
the 30 minutes. So anyways, we are now going to be doing a lot more than we have been doing, which I hope that you guys, if you guys didn't know, if you sign up to be a YouTube channel member at the $5 level, you get daily reports. So in the past week, they have been every other day because we've been traveling and just trying to catch up with life. But if you're a member of the YouTube channel and if you're at any level over $5, you also get the monthly Zoom call, which tomorrow we're doing a Zoom call so we can talk at each other and Linnea is going to be present. And yeah, for the $5 level on Patreon and on YouTube channel, you get reports. But I do want to point out, so Linnea has her own Patreon and I have a Patreon, but all of the proceeds from the YouTube channel are between us. So if you sign up for my Patreon, you're signing up to support me. If you're signing up for her Patreon, you're signing up to support her. For now, it is what it is, but we'll figure it out later. But if you sign up for the YouTube channel, it's to both of us. Also, if you so choose to tip a specific video and Linnea is the voice of that video, you are tipping Linnea. If you so choose to tip a specific video and it's my voice in the video, you're tipping me. So
in the odd occasion that it's both of us, we'll go have some.
yeah. So this is just like this is just like sort of transparency post here, so you know.
It's important to know where money goes,
right? and all of the money from anything that we do make at this point is going back into producing more more content. And well, I do have a special case with my rent that I need to take care of before I can put in the the equal amount of, which is partially why we have unhelpful, yeah, which is partially why our Patreons are separate right now, because if some of you don't know, I had a very interesting rent situation earlier that I will definitely go back into on TikTok Live at some point. But it's
Oh, so he probably just spaced on it because he's celebrating his birthday.
oh, okay, cool.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know where in the world is Linnea at the moment. It's so funny.
Okay.
A question for you ladies. Do you think eventually the Russian soil? So I don't know if there is going to be a war in terms of the civil war. I think there is going to be a clash of powers. So I wouldn't call it a war the same way as, like, Ukrainian people are fighting against Russia and everybody's signing up for the military. Their people are very docile and they very rarely actually rise up. And if they do, it's under the guidance of someone else. We've seen that with the Bolshevik Revolution. We've seen that in 1991 with Yeltsin. So it's never the people's will. It's always like the new dictator, right? So it's gonna be likely a clash of powers and the armies that they form for themselves.
We
So
saw it in Rostov too, because like
yeah.
everyone was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, come on," and then Wagner left, and they're like, "Oh, okay, bye."
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
let's see.
What to do with Donetsk and Luhansk if local population are pro-Russian? Okay, so this is a misconception that I want to address. Millions of people from Donetsk and Luhansk fled in 2014 when Russia came in. There is a fantastic girl on TikTok. Her name is That Olga Girl. She's from Donetsk and she talks a lot about her experience and experience of her friends. She was twice displaced. And so what I want to say is that the people from Donetsk who fled in 2014 are waiting to go back home, and there are millions of them. They settled in Kyiv. There are actually particular settlements that they call Donetsk villages because it's people from Donetsk building houses next to each other and kind of like living there in their little Donetsk environment. They can't wait to go back home. So the people who are left in Donetsk and Luhansk, the pro-Russian people, there are very few of them who were Ukrainian from the beginning, and a lot of them are actually still pro-Ukrainian, but they couldn't move because they didn't have the financial means or they had to take care of family that's disabled or it doesn't have like the health to move. A lot of them just wanted to stay in their home. A lot of them are elderly. A lot of them are brainwashed, but they're the kind of people where wherever the wind blows, they're just gonna go with it. And then there are actual separatists who've been brainwashed into supporting Russia, right? And the rest are literally Russian, like who were moved in there. So there is not much that needs to be done with that because millions of people who left the Mets will come back home, and then they're the people of the Mets.
Let's see.
What's Linnea's Patreon? It's
Let's put it in
oh
the
yeah,
chat.
yeah, good.
It's my name.
It's literally Linnea Hubbard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow, look at that. We got to your new content. It's especially nice to have more strong female voices speaking in this sphere. Oh, thank you, Kristen. That's kind of like how I feel because I think you know that I don't tolerate bullshit. And I happen to come from the tech field as you know, I was a UX designer. And so I am very strongly opposed to men being misogynistic because I'm a woman and this is just ingrained. So I do tend to see that there are a lot of men coming in, especially in TikTok lives, and being like, "Oh, what do you know about the war?" Way more than you, bro. And so I do want to hear more Ukrainian, more female voices and more Ukrainian female voices specifically dissecting the geopolitics and the combat aspect of it because I feel like we have been confined solely to talking about like Ukrainian culture and traditions and, military bros don't take us seriously. But I hope that I've been breaking that stereotype because I do try my best to be like, okay, let's take the stereotypes aside and listen to what I have to say because I promise you will find something interesting here for you.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um, oh, pacifist has very good criticism always, like very constructive. So, what would you say to people who don't want to give cluster munitions for HIMARS because mines are harmful after the war? The territory of Ukraine is mined to the degree that it's going to take 10 years to demine it, and that's the work of Russians. So honestly, at this point, if we can get the Russians out so we can start demining the territory faster, then then it needs to happen. And if somebody's worrying about mines multiplying at this point, Ukrainian soldiers cannot do the counteroffensive as fast or as efficiently as they wanted to, specifically because of how mined the territory is. So, more or less, is really not going to change. Is not going to change the situation, but it is going to repel Russians, and it is going to put them out of Ukraine faster, so we can start demining what they have already done faster.
I will also say that cluster munitions have been really useful in creating mini explosives for
Mhm.
drones.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Why not the same energy about all Russian war crimes? And Kristen, oh yeah, I really I love the ladies who work in male-dominated fields because I feel like we all had to like develop the same backbone. And even if we grew up our entire like lives thinking we have a backbone, I think you have to reevaluate having a backbone once you enter a male dominated sphere and you are someone's superior and they're a male and they feel like it's appropriate to teach you and talk back to you while you are their superior and you're clearly more qualified than they are and you have to handle it professionally.
There's definitely like an aspect of like testing our knowledge and understanding and stuff
Yeah,
like that. Like
but there
if
is
we're
also like
saying something, then
but
they'll
there
be
is
like,
also
"Oh, it's illusionist blood type."
yeah, but there but there is also an aspect of like in every male dominated field, right? There is an aspect of you have to get your shit together so much because if a male was questioned on something, on their knowledge, and they like respond to you dismissingly and condescendingly, that's fine because oh, why did you question him to begin with? If you're a woman and you just literally laugh at someone who questions you, you are a hysterical bitch who doesn't know what she's talking about. So you have to actually get your stuff together. You have to form a very, very, very technical response, and then you can be a bitch.
Okay.
Oh, Tatiana, how do you tell the difference between a war tourist, ooh, and a humanitarian volunteer? I love that question. Also, thank you for the super chat.
Yeah.
Those are really helpful. Okay, so, Linnea, we talked about it the other day actually, so I'll let you start and then I'll add.
Yeah. So um basically just from the get-go, it's what is the purpose for going? Is it to um up yourself? You know, is it to promote your own work? Or are you literally going and saying, I will do this, regardless if it's on camera,
Mhm.
if anyone ever hears about it, doesn't matter.
Mhm.
War tourism um, is not only inconvenient, it is actively harmful
Yeah.
because what it's doing is giving people the impression that they have another body who can help them. And I don't know if you listened to the interview with Brandon
Mhm.
that I did, but he talked about people doing civilian evacuation with him, and they would be like, "Oh, I really want to do civilian evacuation," but then they would get there and they'd be like, "Well, tell me what to do."
Yeah, and it's like if you don't know how to do it, don't go
Don't
because
go.
you are just harmful.
Mhm.
Another thing that I wanna say that it's like, there are war profiteers and volunteerists that are volunteers. These 2 things are not, like, mutually exclusive. So there are a couple of, like, Ukrainian diaspora people that I've seen that fly to Ukraine and film these, like, very romanticized war kind of things, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, look, I now know how to fix a BMP." No, you don't. You took someone's time to teach you how to do the bare minimum that you actually wouldn't be able to help anybody with. You took their resources, you took their time, you got 1,000 Instagram likes, and you spent $2,000 to fly to Ukraine to do this, while you could have donated that $2,000 to that mechanic instead of spending the money to actually actively do this, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually something that I struggle a lot with because I'm going to Ukraine in August, and I'm Ukrainian. I'm not diaspora. This is my literal home. I haven't seen my grandparents in 7 years, and they're not young. I haven't seen my dad in 7 years. I haven't been home in 7 years, and unfortunately, this is the time where I just got my green card. And there are certain things that I feel like I can only do in Ukraine and that the benefits outweigh the cost, right? Like, for instance, there is bulldog rescue, and hiring a photographer to go do a plot about them and go film the bulldog rescue is going to be about 700 500 to $700, right? Because they have to drive to Zaporizhia, they have to be able to, they have to want to go there, they have to not be scared. But we can't do like a journalist to go there because we need a videographer who's going to film like an actual, like, this is the bulldog rescue. So my flight to Ukraine return is about $1,000, right? However, I don't need accommodation. I do not need to consume resources. I have my parents with accommodation. I have my parents with a car. I don't have to like take someone's tickets away on the train to get to Zaporizhia. I can drive there, right? And so I think that me going home and me talking to Ukrainian designers to do the rotation here and bring them profits is worth it. Taking the interview with Torque in person has been really difficult because of his schedule and because we can't keep accommodating like a photographer with Torque because both of these people's schedules are really tight. And then Torque cancels last minute because he has to go to Zaporizhia. So if I were there and I did a televised interview, we could help Azov fundraise, and I am okay with him rescheduling every 5 minutes, and I don't have to coordinate that, right? We can also go to the bulldog rescue, and we can actually go and film the plot, and we can edit it, we can put it out, we can do so because I have this platform, and because I am Ukrainian, because I'm visiting my family, and I'm not consuming as many resources. I think it's justified. But I also have this constant struggle thinking like, should I just donate $1,000 somewhere instead of going, right? But at the same time, it's like my parents who are Ukrainian people living in a war zone are like, no, please come, right? So it's kind of like you have that invitation. Personally, most like, and I say this very lovingly, but if you're a Ukrainian diaspora and you have like a third cousin you haven't seen in 15 years, and that justifies your $1,000 plane ticket, and you're going to go to all of these different cities and paint, I don't know, like flowers on a fence and then televise that, donate the money that you use for the tickets to go back and forth to organizations that actually know what they're doing, that don't need to waste resources training you in knowing what to do, and that's actually going to help more because you're technically volunteering and you're helping, but realistically, you're helping yourself get an Instagram following. And it's really not like it's the like the cost doesn't outweigh the benefit. Like the benefits don't outweigh the cost. And you would help much more if you just donated that money that you spend getting to Ukraine, that you spend having a hotel in Warsaw, that you spend on a ticket to Ukraine, on the railways, that you spend on all of these things. If you have that money, donate it straight to the organization, because it's much better. Unless you actually have very specific things that you are gonna do, instead of just going there and being like, "I'm gonna help," and then you get there and you are, like, looking for things to do. Do not do that. Unless someone literally told you, "Hey, I need you here on the ground," don't go. Unless you're a medic or you're a soldier or you're specifically, like, trained in logistics, if you just wanna go and be like, "I'm a humanitarian volunteer," you're likely harming, not helping, and it's a very harsh pill to swallow. But I see a lot of, like, bloggers do this, and it honestly pains me because I don't know how to break it to you, but you are harming. And, like, even if you're Ukrainian from, like, 5th generation, 4th, 3rd, whatever, and you just went for no reason because you feel the connection and you want to help. When the war is over and we need rebuilding, that's when you come in. Right now, do not. Because also all of the safety training and all of this stuff, it's like, this is wasted resources. It's wasted resources.
Yeah. I think from the outside, when we see someone and we're trying to identify if they are legit or if they are a war tourist, one of the really good ways to identify that is if they are raising money for a specific thing,
Mhm.
and if previous money that they have raised or previous projects that they've done are well documented.
Mhm.
That includes like literally showing receipts if
Yeah.
they're purchasing things.
Yeah.
If they take criticism well, specifically from Ukrainians,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
even actual humanitarians with the best of intentions mess
Yeah.
up. But then
Yeah.
they take
And
it out.
there is a huge difference between us asking what we need and like Canadians, Americans, English people, Australians imposing onto us what they think we need. And that happens with a lot of volunteers. They come to Ukraine and they're like, well, this is what we're going to give you. And we're like, we don't need this. We actually need this. And we're like, well, this is what we're going to give you.
Yeah.
And it's like, that we don't need that. Save your money. Like, why are you doing this? You know? And then it turns out, because it's a huge problem, right? Like, I personally feel for this a lot because there are a lot of also Ukrainians who are diaspora, which is this is something that people don't talk about. There are a lot of Ukrainian diaspora who have never actually taken an active interest in Ukraine until the war started. And they put out a lot of messages, for instance, teaching people how to pronounce Ukrainian cities. But if you're fifth generation diaspora, you likely speak very old school Ukrainian and you are teaching people how to mispronounce Ukrainian cities. And I've heard that a lot, like a lot. There is a particular creator that I'm not going to name, and I'm not going to give any specifics, but they teach people to say Lviv as like a real word, and it's Lviv. That's not it. There is also they've taught people how to say Kharkiv like this. It's not this is like they because the way that old Ukrainian sounds is very different from modern Ukrainian, and it's actually there is a lot of misconceptions. Also, it tends to be so that when Ukrainian diaspora particularly teaches Ukrainian culture, they actually teach Sharovarshina because at the time at which they immigrated from Ukraine to the United States or Canada, Russian Empire and the Soviet Union were imposing a lot of Sharovarshina as Ukrainian culture, and that's those like very elaborate, super colorful like wreaths or headpieces, right? Not Ukrainian. There is a big difference between like the tacky things that Russia tried to pose as Ukrainian culture versus Ukrainian culture. All of those like red boots that women wear with their vishvankas, not a thing. All of those different colored like pieces to the headpieces, not a thing. Those like huskas that are worn like this, not a thing. Um, Vyshyvankas are also a very big deal because I see a lot of like Vyshyvanka patterns that are being put on like everything, and they're wrong patterns and they're wrong Vyshyvankas and they're printed, but Vyshyvankas have to be embroidered. So it's like there is a lot of misconceptions about Ukrainian culture that are not even the fault of these of the people. It's just that their parents, grandparents, great grandparents moved out at the time in which the Soviet Union and the Russian Empire imposed these ideas of their own culture onto them. And so it's really hard sometimes because I don't want to criticize Ukrainians who like grew up three generations in Canada and are trying to help, but it's like listen to actual like, and I don't mean actual, but as in like, listen to people who grew up in Ukraine because there is a very big gap between the Ukrainian culture that happened in 1800s and 1900s and your like great grandparents passed on to you and then Ukrainian culture today because a lot of the times unfortunately Ukrainian diaspora has been taught Sharavarshina and it's Sharavarshina is like the Cossacks and they're like flowy pants that are basically meant to be represented as like the typical Cossack attire. They slept in them. They didn't wear that. They're horsemen. That's not a real thing. They actually wore like pretty tight pants. So this is not a real thing. But yeah.
And I want to say that it's important to know that this isn't about like keeping the culture
Yeah.
only for native-born Ukrainians.
It's just about asking for the real representation of culture from people that can actually tell you what's real and what's not, because there is a lot. So one of the things I do want to address, which is like also a painful subject, because I am really happy that so many foreigners are buying like Trident themed things and like blue and yellow things. And it's obvious that you support us a lot, right? But what that creates for after the war is a misconception about Ukrainian culture and Ukrainian symbolism because yes, tridents are symbols, but there are a lot of ways in which they're mutilated by like very strange stuff, right? Like by putting all of these like strange things next to them and like all of these things. And it shows Ukrainian culture as this like blue and yellow trident infused like crazy like explosion, right? But actually Ukrainian culture is very like laconic, like elegant, right? And so for instance, we when we go onto like Etsy, we're not going to buy there is a difference between being Native American and having Native American attire and buying a Native American costume in a Halloween store. So I feel like the vast majority of traditional Ukrainian things on Etsy and Amazon and stuff are costumes, and I don't feel like it. It is what it is. And it's good because it creates awareness and a lot of people are buying it, so we know you guys support us, but you are buying costumes that are not white Ukrainian culture, and so you end up having a lot of things that misrepresent Ukrainian culture. So just be mindful of like, a lot of Ukrainians now who want to make money to donate to the army and stuff will cater to that because that's what sells. But the problem is it shouldn't because our culture is not like Ghost of Kyiv. You know? Our culture is like red viburnum and wheat fields and beautiful like plachtas and amazing embroidered vyshyvankas, these and headpieces that don't look like a 6-year-old child an ADHD episode in a coloring book. So yeah, this is my little rant, and I'm so sorry if that's like shitty to hear, and I don't mean to offend anyone at all because I'm so grateful about everything everyone is doing. I just think that sometimes we think that we're doing good and we mean to do good, but it turns out to not be that good.
I think a really good way for people who are not experts to contribute in that way is to present themselves as a learner.
So Tatiana here says, I've been struggling with going because I'm trained as an electrician and I want to help. I believe my help on the ground is more valuable than my limited money. Yes. So if you are trained in a specific field where Ukraine right now needs hands and needs people who are trained who know what to do, before you go reach out, like try to reach out to like DSNS and tell them that this is your skill, and they're likely going to invite you, and then you're gonna know that yes, your help is needed. And this is a good example of not war tourism, but you actually having a specific skill set that is needed and that will help. But it's just the broad term of like, oh, I want to go volunteer in Ukraine. What are you gonna do? I don't know yet. That's when you don't go. Just don't do that. But if you are a specifically trained individual in a specific field that we actually need, yes, we please, thank you. We so appreciate and value you. It's just the people who take up hotel rooms who come to Ukraine to figure out what we want to do. It's like, unfortunately, it's not really volunteering, it's war tourism. DSNS is the rescue services. So DSNS workers include electricians, they include firefighters, they include first responders, they include gas maintenance people. So DSNS are the Ukrainian version of 911, basically, like as a structure. So it combines every single emergency that you might experience.
And it's totally okay to offer a specific assistance.
Yeah.
Regardless of who you are or what your expertise is, because you don't know if it might be useful. It's important if you don't hear a response not to push then, because maybe then it's not a priority.
Yeah.
And also be very specific in what you're offering.
Yeah.
And then wait for them to say, yes,
that's sort of like a thing where, I think that the difference between like a war tourist and like you being harmful rather than helpful is that like in some cases it's good to just go and then figure it out. It's like you want to be a soldier on the front line or a combat medic. Like they'll find what to do for you, right? And if you can hear from someone like we need combat medics and we need volunteers for the Foreign Legion, so yes, go, right? And then figure it out there because they will find where to put you. But if you have like a very specific skill set and you don't quite know if it's going to be helpful or if it's not going to be helpful, I think a good idea is to first reach out and find a place that needs you and then go instead of going and then looking for a place that needs you, because at that point, you're asking them to accommodate you, not the other way
You're
around.
shoving yourself in
Yeah.
where you may not fit.
Yeah, so it's like kind of here's the thing, right? Like, for instance, I Linnea is gonna come with me to some portion of the trip to Ukraine, right? And the way that we justify it is we actually looked up how much it would cost to have someone as a videographer, like, following me around and helping me do all of these interviews and do the bulldog rescue and do all of these things, and actually both of our travel combined, provided that she does not need accommodation, she does not need food or anything like that. It's like my family already provides that, right? Is actually cheaper to have her with me than to hire someone to do these things, right? So, we're gonna have a set schedule, and it's not gonna be like, "We're in Ukraine, and we're gonna look for people to interview and things to do." Like, no, we have actually such a busy schedule that I am like, I'm gonna need to it's like I need to see my family, I need to hang out with my grandparents, I need to do a buttload of work, I need to fundraise, I need to do all of these things. But at the end of the day, the value that we can bring to Ukraine by going there is much higher than by us sitting here and answering questions for you, for instance. Not that it's not valuable, but just saying that, like, the trip to Ukraine is justified because we do have specific things that we need to do that we can only do there. So, yeah. Mhm. The role of an info supporter against Russia without having a basic level of knowledge of Russian misinformation, messaging, and talking points. Yes, I do see, especially on Twitter, there are so many NATO members who mean well, but they end up parroting Ukrainian propaganda, and I see them ganging up on Ukrainians more often than I see them actually supporting Ukrainians. So it's like they support Ukraine, but they don't support Ukrainians because Ukrainians are annoying and their talking points are annoying and their opinions are annoying and their needs are annoying and they're just like so annoying. And I see NATO literally constantly questioning Ukraine and Ukrainians, but then being like, "Ah, Slava Ukraini!" But then, like, "This Ukrainian person sucks, go unfollow them. We hate them." It's like, dude, you're like, where are you? Have you been to Ukraine? Why are you speaking on my behalf what I and my people might need? To of Ukraine despite of having Ukrainian Canadian heritage. Aw. Well, see, I appreciate that a lot. I appreciate when people are willing to learn new things because a lot of the times what I run into with diaspora is that because their knowledge of Ukraine stems from 1800s, they're trying to teach me what real Ukraine is like, but it's like, no, 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 that's what Ukraine was like 200 years ago. The Ukraine we're fighting for today has nothing to do with what your great 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 grandfather taught you. Well, it does, like in literature and in other things, right? But it's like there are certain ideas and certain things that you might not understand because if, there is a matter of citizenship, right? As in, like, I'm a Ukrainian citizen, so what happens to Ukraine actually affects me. It affects my literal ability to like live, travel, exist because my only passport is that of a Ukrainian citizen, right? So it's my country, my government, my political system, and I'm actively involved in it. When you are a Ukrainian, but you are not a citizen, it's a little more vague to you because your literal life does not depend on where Ukraine goes. So you're not affected by LGBTQIA laws because you live in Canada or the US and like you are affected by the political system here, right? But I am. And the Ukrainians that grew up in Ukraine, that possess that citizenship, that lived there their whole lives, are affected by all the little teensy tiny changes. And so that's why it's very important to listen to people with the citizenship, not because we are the better kind of Ukrainians, but no, because it actually literally affects our future.
And I will say, as the grandchild of immigrants, I would never represent myself as a professional Swede. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not. I would never teach Swedish culture because that's not my culture. However, I might share what my experiences are as a scanned American, and our traditions are they're very
Yeah.
different because, like,
Yeah.
when my grandparents immigrated, it wasn't cool to be from a foreign country.
Yeah.
So, like, Swedish wasn't spoken in the house.
But
It
also
was,
there is a huge
you know,
difference between like a Ukrainian Canadian, a Ukrainian American, and a Ukrainian in
mhm,
our like culture, ways of expression and stuff like that. Because again, it's not bad, but it's like you can't say I'm a Ukrainian Canadian and this is how I grew up and I represent Ukrainian culture. You represent Ukrainian Canadian culture because there is a
mhm.
more. You know what I'm
And
saying?
was there a Ukrainian Canadian community that your family, was a
Yeah.
part of, or were you isolated amongst other cultural groups?
Yeah. So there is that's a big distinction. And I think that it is very important to kind of like swallow your ego because I know
Mhm.
that all of us are like, but I identify with it so much. But it's like, does it, at the end of the day, does it affect you more than just being upset and being devastated? Because for me, my literal existence depends on it, right? And so does my dad's and my mom's and my aunts and my grandma's and my grandpa's and like my entire family, right? Like, hell, my dog has a Ukrainian passport. I got that card. I'm kidding. But the point is that, like, you need to sometimes like swallow your ego and just kind of let people with citizenships dictate the way a little bit because at the end of the day, we are the people who are going to be the most affected. And the people with Ukrainian citizenships in Ukraine, which is why one of the things that I do on my channel is I take a lot of feedback from Ukrainians that have been in Ukraine this whole time, and I read the comments and I see what people want to express. And I'm very like I feel so incredibly like yes, and this is good that I'm doing this when I receive comments from Ukrainians being like, "This is what I want to say, but I didn't know how to put it in English," or like, "Thank you for talking about this. This is something no one's talking about," or "This is something I wish someone would be talking about," because then I know I'm doing my job right, and I'm like actually speaking on behalf of most Ukrainians, right? So
Okay,
yeah.
sure, this one. Are you talking about the frontline kitchen? Um, this is actually um, one of those areas where, um, especially people who are already in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
where it is not a major cost factor
Mm-hmm.
to travel to wherever um, and cook. Um,
Yeah.
it's it's not glamorous.
Yeah.
Um, it's hot and it's gross. I've worked in kitchens before.
Yeah.
But this is actually a really
Good point.
good
So for
opportunity.
me, it's like I don't want to deter people from volunteering. I don't want to tell you like, oh, if you're a foreigner, you're not Ukrainian, don't go. It's just more of like, if you have to question what you're gonna do there, you're not ready to go. If you know where to go, you've contacted the organization and they told you, yes, come, by all means, please go. Just don't make yourself kind of a hindrance by
Mhm.
just walking around and looking for things that you could be helpful with. Another thing is that a lot of people that want to go volunteer on the front lines waste gas and resources, get to the front lines, hear a couple of explosions, get scared, and leave
Or need to be rescued.
or need to leave. Yeah. So here's the thing when you're going to the front lines, you might die. And like you need to understand that. It's not like, oh, it's a free frontline kitchen, so I'm safe. Like, no, there are explosions there any every day. And like you might die. So when you go there, you need to understand there is a 50% chance that you're not gonna come back. And you need to be okay with that. So that's the kind of thing where you can't get there and be like, "Oh, crap, I'm scared." Because, like, then you wasted resources and you wasted time. So, yeah, you need to this is why I'm, like, saying, if you just had this romanticized idea of, like, "I wanna go help the poor Ukrainians," like, we don't really need people who are not qualified or don't know how to help. We've had a lot of those, and, if you want to go to Ukraine and start an Instagram channel or a TikTok channel, or if you have a TikTok channel where people are not very active and you think that going to Ukraine is gonna help it, and then people are gonna start watching, like,
Give it a few years.
please don't do that. Like, please don't do that because, like, you're doing it for you, not for Ukraine.
And if you're wanting to stimulate the economy and like
Yeah.
spend your dollars
You
in
can
shops
order
there,
online.
order from Etsy or from whatever
Or
from
most of them now ship, like, they
yeah,
ship most of them
individual
have
shops
English
and
websites, and, like, if you find
mhm.
also pro tip, if you wanna order something from Ukraine, you go on their Instagram, they don't have a website or there is nothing in English. Most Ukrainian shops take orders through DMs, and they'll send you an invoice and, like, a payable link online, and you will get, like, your tracking through it and stuff like that. I order like that all the time.
So I want to highlight this one really quickly.
Mhm.
Thank you. So talking about sponsoring a visa for refugees, or there are lots of ways to help, even not directly to
Yeah.
people in Ukraine.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who have been displaced outside of the country who need
Yeah.
assistance.
It also actually seems like Rod really has been doing his research and, like, has
Yeah.
helped actually, like, see, this is also another example of, like, not war tourism, like, he knows which places need which volunteers. It seems like
Mhm.
you're very aware of everything you're doing and how it's impacting people. This is the kind of help that we, like, struggle to find.
Well informed. It's really
Mhm.
important to be well informed. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Also, I
yeah.
really need to use the bathroom, so let me come back.
Okay.
And I think that we should limit it to an hour and a half because we do have a lot to do today. So
Yeah.
I think 10 minutes.
10 more minutes.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a good.
Okay, let me see if we have any comments. Okay, Grumpy, this was a really good point. There were definitely people who showed up in Ukraine who were veterans, who thought that they had equivalent military experience, um, and many of them have since said that fighting in Ukraine was unlike any military experience that they had had before. It's very different from the experience of, for example, American soldiers in Afghanistan. Very, very different. And I think a lot of folks who volunteered in these early months were not prepared for that. And that's why now Ukraine is very specific about saying, like, you need to have actual combat experience, and ideally a needed specialty. Demining, for example, drones, for example. Okay. Um, Tatiana, that's a good plan. So, yeah, so if you set up a contact with someone like at Filling Kitchen, I'm going to pull up their Twitter account. Richard is great. Um, so, okay, so uh, this is a really good way to assess how much you can handle, because knowing your own boundaries as a volunteer is really important for not, first of all, traumatizing yourself, and second of all, not burdening the people that you're trying to help. That's a really good idea. That's Twitter, not Telegram, but yeah, you can DM Richard on Twitter or message him on Twitter as well if you have Twitter. Don't know about Telegram. I'll have to look that up. Um, yeah, absolutely. What else? We have about 7 minutes left. Does anyone have any other questions that we can answer for you? About 7 minutes, and we will reschedule shortly. Sorry for the mix-up. Yeah. Julia, are you acquainted with any members of the IT Army of Ukraine? Ooh, okay. Are you familiar with, are you acquainted with any members of the IT Army of Ukraine?
Yes, I actually was part of the IT army of Ukraine for a little while until I did not have any more time to dedicate, and I kind of doing my own thing. But yes, I am. Why?
What's upcoming for us ladies?
Oh my gosh. We are planning to do a residency of Ukrainian designers in New York, and we are actually about to sign the contract for the space. And we're going to be talking to a lot of designers in person in Kyiv because a lot of the time, so we really want it to be successful. And for that, we want to represent Ukrainian culture and Ukrainian stuff, not only as trade-ins and stuff, not only as merch, but as actual, like, long-term, like, show you Ukrainian manufacturers that are fantastic and for a fraction of the price. But the problem with that is that a lot of the things online, right, like, look a certain way, but not be the same quality in person, and it's hard to like, there are certain places that I know for sure are fantastic because I've ordered from some I know the people. But certain of them I would like to see in person, and I would like to it's always easier to do things like that when you're there. So we're gonna be talking to a lot of Ukrainian brands when we are in Ukraine, and we're gonna be doing a lot of, a lot of a lot of things like that. We so there is gonna be in November, I think we chose as the month where in New York we're gonna do a massive 1-month residency with like a huge opening, and we're gonna invite a lot of actually some celebrities that will come, and they're gonna be very surprising for you. We're also gonna invite Ukrainian bloggers and stuff like that, and we're really gonna try to spread the word about it far and wide because we really do want these businesses to make money. We want to show you what Ukrainian great capabilities of manufacturing are because I think a lot of people don't know. United 24 is might or might not be involved. There's a lot of exciting stuff for that, so we are actually spending a lot of time planning that because it is not easy. And and then we have a lot brewing. We're also planning another podcast for you guys, that's gonna be visual. We are doing a lot, and also I have this idea, which I don't know if it's gonna work out, but I want to I reached out to U24 to offer them that because I think they're gonna have more, credibility to reach out to this company, but I would love to do an expansion pack for Cards Against Humanity Ukraine edition with jokes about Zelensky and Budanov and Arestovich and all of these things and kind of like Ukrainian culture and stuff. And so stay tuned for that. Hopefully U24 bites, and we would love to help them come up with the prompts and stuff. And I think that it would be a great thing to do, like Cards Against Humanity X Unit at 24, and all of the proceeds are going to go to charity or like part, yes, because obviously Cards Against Humanity is not gonna. What kind of volunteers are most sought currently? Um, Sakai, you can message me on Instagram or on Twitter, and I can actually ask the IT army for, to add you to their Telegram channel because they do have one, and they will very often send out like things that need to be done as like alerts. So they'll be like, oh, like this server needs this, and that, or we need to like make this viral or something like that, right? Like, so they will send out like literal things they need at the moment, and they will have the people just pick them up. So I think that's if you would like to, if you would like to, they will. It would be. I can put you in touch. So just message me on Instagram. But if I don't respond till Monday, I'm so sorry. I'm very backed up. Like I definitely mostly take like a day or two at max. Normally I respond pretty immediately. It's just this weekend is a little crunchy. It's a little crunchy on time. Yeah.
Alright.
Oh my gosh. So do you guys we have this is a new this is a new thing. The Twitter and IG is the same as TikTok. It's YEWLEEA. So easy to find me everywhere. It's just the same thing. But but oh, this is a great question right there. But so we started a company over here, and it's called Borlingen Media, and it's borscht and lingon because lingonberries are the Swedish traditional thing, and borscht. And so this is a beet and a lingonberry, and this is our little logo that was done by Zero, who also did the portrait of me for the channel. And he's fantastic, and he asked us to donate his payment to the cause in Ukraine that we see fit. So he did this for us, and we are very excited for our borscht and lingon adventures. And that's what's coming for the channel, and that's what's coming for places. Uh, Parasoda. Ooh. How helpful are NATO and people helping in the information war really? I'm gonna be very crude here, and I'm gonna say when they mass repost things, they're very helpful. But when they start putting in their own opinion and fighting with people and fighting with Ukrainians, they're incredibly harmful because lately on Twitter, I see more NAFO people literally shitting on Ukrainians, discrediting them, and like tanking their profiles more than I see them actually doing good because it started as like just a troll farm, literally, like a self-made troll farm, and it turned into a literal troll farm because now there are these people who deem themselves experts on Ukraine who forgot why they started doing this to begin with, and they're literally like shitting on Ukrainians and our opinions. Like I can't tell you the amount of times that some random dudes from NAFO came to my profile and were like, "You're not even Ukrainian. You're probably an American CIA spy." And I'm like, and I spend time proving to this person that I'm actually Ukrainian because they have 55 people behind them who are ready to who are ready to literally kill my page because they now decided that I am like a foreign agent or something because they didn't like something I said because it doesn't sit well with their egos. And it's insane. It's insane. And I see so many Ukrainians having this experience like in the comments where there is like some NAFO bro fighting with a Ukrainian and then they're like and they multiply within like 30 seconds because they just sent it out on the Discord server and then there is like a whole freaking army of these NAFO trolls attacking you. And you're like, "Holy shit, dude, like, I'm sorry you didn't like what I said, but at the end of the day, you're sitting somewhere in Greece, and I'm very sorry for being this rude, but you don't give a fuck. And your life doesn't depend on it, and I'm sorry, but you like, I don't give a fuck what you think about my country or what you think we should want. It's not up to you. Like, please stop teaching me like what to do, right? But it's like there are pros when like, when there is information that needs to be spread from like government officials and they start virally like putting it out, yes. But then for individual Ukrainian profiles, they're very harmful. They're incredibly harmful.
There are a lot of them that have effectively gamified support.
Yeah, yeah. And then like, there's this whole like situation with Maria and Nafo, where like Maria will discredit anybody who questions them, and they will literally like Nafo trolls are literally gonna go and start attacking people who speak out against Maria. And the funny thing about Maria is that there is not a single freaking Ukrainian there. Not a single one. Like, and I went and I was a speaker on it, and I felt gaslit the whole time. And yeah, it was awful. It was an awful experience. I don't think they're helpful. I think they spread a lot of misinformation.
Ukrainians, like
And
every group, are not a monolith.
yeah. And also the funny thing is that like specifically with Maria, there's so many people defending them, right? But at this point, they've amplified James Vasquez without background checking him or anything and still stand by him. And the guy is a scammer, the guy is a grifter, and the guy is dangerous. And the guy has like scammed Ukrainian military, and there are multiple Ukrainians speaking out against these people, against Maria, against the people they amplify. And Nafo is like, but I like Maria, I believe them. And it's like Ukrainians are telling you they're harmful. They're harmful to us, the people that you are doing this for, right? Right? Right?
One of the biggest tools that we have for fighting misinformation is when we know better, we do better.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of the times NAFTA doesn't listen to Ukrainians. How can the Russian troll information groups be manipulated to harm Russia and benefit Ukraine? Wait, that's a loaded one. That's a good one. Uh, um, so Russian trolls will repost anything that shits on Ukraine. So you can literally put out misinformation and feed it to them, and they will repost it and they will make it go viral. But the point is that you feed them misinformation that's so easy to disprove that doesn't even make sense, and people start seeing like, oh, wait. Because I've seen that done. Like this is a lot of what the AT army I think actually does. Um, actually does. And so I think that it's really good to feed them ridiculous narratives because they're gonna believe them and they're just gonna indiscriminately repost them. They don't do fact checking. And then you can easily like be like, oh, by the way, I created this narrative, and here is Russian trolls literally biting all over it. And pacifists, so I'm inclined to believe this simply because, like, okay, so hi guys, this is pacifist, and he's very opinionated, or she. I'm sorry, but they are very opinionated, but in a very good way. Because honestly, when I first started this channel, I relied on their on their criticism and on their kind of like advice and stuff a lot, and so did my husband. My husband loves you, by the way. Because it seems like you're very knowledgeable about Ukraine info space, and you're also very knowledgeable about like what's good, what's bad, like in terms of like sort of specific things to put out. And I don't mean narratives, or I don't mean specific topics. I mean more like functionally, right? And so it seems like you have a very vast knowledge and fact checking of all of these things. So I'm very inclined to believe this, and I'm going to go check this because I do really appreciate your advice, just so you know.
And clear, just because NAFO
Mhm.
universally is problematic or has problematic aspects does not mean that there aren't parts of NAFO that are doing
Yeah,
really good
yeah,
things.
exactly. It's just that as a whole thing, they do a lot more harm than good. But then there are specific, like obviously members and specific groups that are very good. It's just that you can't really just solely trust like all the NAFO and be like, NAFO's good for Ukraine. Like,
Just because they're a felon doesn't mean they know what they're doing.
yeah, and just because they're fella doesn't mean they're pro-Ukrainian because there's so many fellas that are actually just incredibly awful. And then there are Russians who make themselves fella avatars because it's like it's not like there is some sort of a, you know,
Purification.
yeah, or graduation. It's like anybody can donate $1 to the Georgian Legion and get a NAFO profile picture, right? And that doesn't make you. It doesn't mean that you know anything about Ukraine. And then you're just like over there, with your little, what is it, a Shiba Inu,
Mhm.
with your little Shiba Inu yelling at Ukrainians. It's just kind of like, so yeah, yeah, that's
Cool. Well, it is
yeah,
now an hour and a half. So
yeah. Well, we went over.
thank you
Thank
for
you guys
joining us.
for joining us. Thank you for all of your commentary. Um, okay, I'm gonna quickly respond to this one, and then we're gonna go because I think it's important. So
Mhm.
it's how do I feel about the judge, with the Supreme Court judge being arrested during the time of war? Fantastic, because even during the time of war, when we see corruption, we actually deal with it rather than sweeping it under the rug and getting it unnoticed uh, in the middle of other news. One of the issues with eliminating corruption in Ukraine was literally the Russian Communist Party, the one that was like super pro-Russian and leaking information. They would block any and every legislation. So the insane level of levels of corruption is also a very misleading statement. They're not insane. It's just that Ukrainian people are actually very vocal in like popularizing these issues. And I noticed, like for instance, Kyiv Independent does a lot of articles for foreigners that actually highlight a lot of really bad stuff that's going on in Ukraine because we're honest about it. And it seems like, oh my gosh, there's all this terrible stuff going on, but that's not really the case. We're incredibly vocal about all of our problems, and we're very open about them. Instead of just discussing them within the Ukrainian community, we also bring them to the public because we don't want to seem like this nation who's like perfect, and like we don't want to be these like martyrs, right? That like the world has kind of made us into. Like we have our issues, but this actually indicates that we're actively working on them rather than anything else. So it's great that this is happening. And the Minister of Defense did not steal money from soldiers' food. First of all, the Minister of Defense is a lawyer with he is such an incredibly educated and incredibly amazing person that first of all, this is misinformation. He has been acquitted of all of that, and another person who is the Deputy Minister of Defense was actually found to have been involved in this. And I can tell you from literally having heard this from the minister himself. If he wanted to steal money, he would do it in a way that you would find out. Like seriously, he's a guy with so many connections and so many degrees, and he's incredibly like through eggs. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And the Minister of Defense like has been. Here's the thing: this has started happening when Ukraine was actively returning all of the territories. And Reznikov has been an incredibly effective Minister of Defense. So all of these things that are like popping up against him are clearly a campaign to discredit him and what he's doing, because he has been fantastic at negotiations with other MODs in other countries, and he has been fantastic at getting Ukraine what Ukraine needs, because he's incredible specifically at negotiation. He's a lawyer. He's a lawyer and he's former military. He has a lot of military experience. So he's actually been a fantastic defense minister. And discrediting him is one of the main things that Russia wants to do. So please don't ever say the statement of the Minister of Defense stole money from soldiers' food. It's misinformation. There was an allegation that that had happened, and it had actually been disproven. So allegedly, he could have. The chances of that, very low. Please don't phrase things that create in a way that creates misinformation. I had to actually step up for it because Reznikov is a fantastic defense minister.
All right. So it seems like there are lots of questions, so I think we can set up another Q&A in the future. So
but also, if you guys want to, I can set up a Patreon Q&A where you can ask questions in advance, so we can prepare to have like a specific amount of time set out. So we can do this once a month. And I guess starting from the $10 level, at the same level on Patreon and here as comes with the Zoom calls and stuff. And also tomorrow at 11 Chicago time, so noon EST, we are doing a Zoom call. We are doing a Zoom call with all of you, and we do this once. Well, I do this once a month, and so you get access to it as a YouTube channel member, and you get access to it as a patron. So don't forget to, if you would like to support us, please sign up, and you will be able to ask questions tomorrow on Zoom.
Thank you for joining us, guys.
Yes, we have to like literally like end this because there are questions still coming in. Okay, bye.